you're familiar with baseball, not everybody is, but you have a pitcher and a catcher. Hydrogen is the both. It's the pitcher winds up and gives the energy, throws the ball, creates stress, oxidative stress. Life has its own stress, and then it catches the stress like the catcher and turns the free radicals, the worst of them, to water.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Holistic Navigator podcast, where we believe in the body's capacity for self-healing if it's given the proper nutrients and care it deserves. My name is Brian Strickland, I'm the producer of the show, and here with me in the studio, as always, is your host, Ed Jones. On today's episode, we're speaking with Dr. Mark Sircus. He's an acupuncturist, a doctor of oriental and pastoral medicine, and author of many health-related books. And while Dr. Sircus has many areas of expertise, we wanted to talk to him specifically about hydrogen medicine today. Hydrogen is a really unique atom. It's the smallest and most abundant one in the universe, and it makes up a big part of who we are as human beings. Dr. Sircus believes that hydrogen medicine is a revolution sweeping across the world of medicine. So we wanted to get his take on what exactly it is, how it can help people, what hydrogen can do in the body, and more. Well, that's it for me, everyone. We have a lot of ground to cover today, as always, so let me go ahead and pass it over to our host, Mr. Ed Jones.
Thank you so much, Brian, as always. And today, I know I always talk about the fact that I have, interesting, exciting guests, but this particular person, I've actually looked forward to this gentleman coming on for quite some time, one of which is I've been following this person, and he has similar, what I feel, passions for learning, passions for nutrition, teaching, empowering other people, as I do. We have a broken system, there's no doubt. I think the pandemic indicated that with the fact that people saw the brokenness of philosophies and how the medical system really is a weak system. We have to really have our toolkit, half of it, together in our own world to be ready to take care of ourselves and our loved ones. Well, today we're going to have Dr. Sircus to the Holistic Navigator. And this gentleman, he is a acupuncturist, doctor of oriental and pastoral medicine, a prolific writer, and has covered many subjects on the whole topic of self-healing and nutrition. Now, one thing I saw on his website I really, really appreciated was they wrote that his approach is humanitarian because it pays attention to the majority who cannot afford this expensive medical treatments and pharmaceutical drugs. And so he has a great website, which he'll talk about, and I have many articles on there. But today we're going to speak about a new, what I feel like almost miraculous option for our health that no one has really addressed in the past, and it is on hydrogen medicine. And welcome to the Holistic Navigator, Dr. Sircus.
Well, thanks, Ed, for having me.
I want to delve into this because, I deal with people all day long, 6 days a week. Sometimes we have hundreds of people come through our wellness clinic. We have 17 practitioners. We have a nutrition store. We have a lot of stuff going on. And very, very, very few have any knowledge, any working knowledge of the potential of this molecule, which is the smallest molecule in the universe, called hydrogen. And you are extremely skilled in explaining this. So you want to start this conversation with just like, how did you get into this as far as hydrogen, and what are you learning, and how can it apply to each of us in our daily life?
Well, hydrogen is the backbone of the universe. From the invisible, non-physical universe jumping into the physical comes hydrogen. And it's everywhere. All the suns eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It floods into stellar space, into galactic space, and it's the basis of life, along with oxygen, along with carbon dioxide. And it offers salvation for our race, not only in terms of energy, because it's a non-polluting energy source. When you have a hydrogen car, for example, what comes out of the exhaust is pure water. And so if you use it for planes and buses and trains, it's going to be non-polluting energy source. And for the body, it also offers salvation, because it's first of all, when you treat medically with hydrogen, it's so small, it gets everywhere. I mean, when I mean everywhere, it'll touch down on every cell, including the tip of your nose and the tip of your toes and your retina. It just gets its brain everywhere. And it has a certain very interesting effect. Like cars, trains, and buses, it provides energy. Like in food, it's a fuel. And it will stimulate the mitochondria and stimulate oxidative stress. I mean, the process of oxidation, which creates, even in a very healthy person, oxidative stress. It's one of the reasons oxygen by itself is not the safest molecule, because there's a stress involved in it. And as such, you cannot give pure oxygen without killing a person. You have to have CO2 mixed in with it. And maybe we'll have time to get into that, because my book on hydrogen medicine, which just came out in the United States in hardback and softcover, is the subtitle is combining oxygen with hydrogen and CO2. It's getting command simultaneously of the three gases. But hydrogen, we focus on hydrogen. So it gives energy, it stimulates life, but it's like if you're familiar with baseball, not everybody is, but you have a pitcher and a catcher. Hydrogen is the both. It's the pitcher, winds up and gives the energy, throws the ball, creates stress, oxidative stress. Life has its own stress, and then it catches the stress like the catcher and turns the free radicals, the worst of them, to water. So it's an antioxidant, the smallest, like 137 times smaller than vitamin C. And it takes down the free radicals, so it reduces oxidative stress and thus also reduces inflammation. So it's like an insurance policy. I deal a lot with cancer patients, and no matter what you're doing, whatever treatment approach you're following, especially if you're using radiation, which creates an enormous amount of oxidative stress, and chemotherapy, it's like an insurance policy. It gives you the edge. It's like a wind that blows you away from death's door. And I say that literally because most of the studies in China and Japan are under those kind of conditions, ICU, emergency room medicine, where they're using this on very difficult, life-threatening situations. Even when a person is on their last day and they're dying, it can blow you away from that door.
I love that. I love that. That's a strong statement, and I know people are going to be excited to learn all they can about this, because the people listening to this podcast have a great open mind, and they're trying to fill their personal toolkit with more knowledge and options. And again, I love the way that you said how small this molecule is, and I think people should realize that even if you take something like vitamin C or regular food or any nutrient, there's so many places in the body that molecule probably can't get to, one of which is past the brain barrier. Well, hydrogen has a free pass to every single cell in the body. In fact, I just listened a couple days ago to a guy named Tyler LeBaron, who's considered also very well spoken about hydrogen. And even back in 1970 in Texas A&M University, they did a big study with people of melanoma and put them in a hydrogen tank, basically a unit like hyperbaric, and tremendous results. But as you and I know, Dr. Sircus, we kind of have a corrupt system. truth doesn't always surface. In fact, it's sometimes censored like we've never seen, like now it's censored more than any time. And that's where people like you and we're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to put the information out. And so, me looking at your site and listening to these other people, I mean, we're talking about possible applications, in fact, in the literature to 170 different health disorders that have very good references to hydrogen, everything from Parkinson to cardiac dysfunction, even hearing loss under chemo. I just am so excited because this is like a new kid on the block, really, and it's not difficult to do. I want you to talk about the options of how people can introduce hydrogen into their body, because I actually, Dr. Sircus, bought a hydrogen machine from you about a year and a half ago, I think, and it was the Aqua. What's that?
AquaCure.
Yeah.
AquaCure.
And of course, I do the tablets where I put them in water and I drink it, and also drink some of the prepackaged water. But so I'm sorry to take up that time explaining just my personal view on it, but I think people will sense the passion that I have that we really need this. This is not like an improved vitamin C. This is life-saving, as you just said. So continue on. Thank you.
Well, it's life-saving. I want to bring it down to a personal level. I promote two different machines, hydrogen machines. They put out Brown's gas, which has been around for a long time, which is a combination of 66% hydrogen and 33% oxygen. And there are two machines that I recommend. One comes from the United States, which with a discount, buying it through me, get 20% off. It still costs $2,000. Another one from Australia puts out the same gas, is 3 times more expensive, but it's built like a tank, stainless steel, lots of really nice things, including quietness. And they sent me a machine 3.5 months ago, and I started using it all night long. Meaning when I go to sleep, I turn the machine on and I'd sleep. And for years, I really can't remember when it was when I didn't wake up with pain. I've had a neuromuscular situation. I'm 68 years old, since I was 60. And I started doing this therapy, and within a week, I was waking up with no pain. Really? No pain. Wow. Which to me was I didn't get totally enlightened, and it didn't get it maybe influenced my condition positively to a 95 to 97%. But in the morning, I would wake up with no pain, so I could go and do my yoga with no pain. Which is, for me, was a huge thing. That's powerful. I mean, Father Time's going to have its way with all of us, and certainly less for those of us who take good care nutritionally, but it's still going to be wear and tear. And I love that fact, because that is strong. When you say proof's a big word, strong confidence building for anyone who is wondering, would hydrogen really help me? And I want to say, again, people don't have to spend thousands at this stage. They can do these tablets. In fact, I do, tablets. Like I said, I put 2 in water most days and I'll drink it. It does have about 8 parts per million per tablet. And just because I need to say it one time, this show is sponsored by nutritionw.com, and you can purchase the tablets on there. Again, as far as equipment, I really trust your site, Dr. Sircus, and the fact that I know you're ethical and honest, so that's why I trusted buying that machine from your site. And tell people right now, so they don't have to wait to the end, what is your website? My main website is drsircus.com. That's DRSIRCUS.com. And you'll see my new hydrogen book listed on the main page, and it will take you to my hydrogen sites. And I have 3 different hydrogen sites. And one of them shows you the equipment that I recommend. I did the tablets for about 2 years before I got into the inhalation therapy. Mm-hmm. And one of the companies I used to recommend their machine also were one of the pioneers in the tablet market. And they're the ones who supplied me with my tablets. But even they, when it comes down to price analysis or cost analysis, the hydrogen inhalation puts out so much hydrogen that really, I don't even use the water anymore, because the inhalation to scale, it's just in 1 hour of, or even 20 minutes of hydrogen inhalation, it's almost like a bottle of the water, the tablets. So it's and also on my site, you'll see an essay about hydrogen gas healing brain cancer. The water will not get into the brain, will not influence and cross the barrier like the gas will. So most of the real research is on the gas. I became famous in the world for my work in magnesium and then in sodium bicarbonate, which is the most powerful, cheapest medicine on the planet. And so recommending a machine is a $2,500 machine that people can get it through me for, if they use a code, which you'll see on my product site, DRSIRCUS20, get 20% off of $500. But what I really want to say is that even though an investment of $2,000 sounds like a lot to the kind of people I've been dealing with for the last 20 years, it's better than life insurance. I mean, life insurance for sure, and health insurance. And I've never paid for health insurance. Having your own machine, because as you said, the whole medical system is failing us. And that's really coming out in this pandemic. It's becoming very clear. We could do a whole show just on the failures of modern medicine and the ignorance of modern medicine. But when my work, when I do consultations, is to teach people how to set up an ICU or emergency room kind of situation in their own home, where they treat themselves and don't need the doctors and don't need to go to the hospital to avoid it. And hydrogen is a tool, is an instrument you can have in your home and use for years. And not only just you or one person, but the whole family or husband and wife. So the cost benefit is very high. It really is. When you do things right, you can expect much more positive results than when you're doing things wrong, when you're using poisons, which is what modern medicine's all about. It's about pharmaceuticals, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, everything that comes out of the pharmaceutical industry is toxic.
Absolutely. And, the third leading cause of death in this country is pharmaceutical drugs, written by the book and taken the way you're supposed to. Third leading cause. And yet people seem to still discount the seriousness of using chronic pharmaceuticals. I mean, I'm not throwing everything out with the baby, but there are times and places we may need to use it very short run. But this chronic use of pharmaceuticals is devastating this country. And then secondly, just because I tend to be outspoken, it's also the quality of care is, I don't know if you see this, Dr. Sircus, it is decreasing significantly with the skill level, even in the world of traditional medicine. There seem to be more and more clueless, and they're making such poor decisions. Most people who walk into any quick care place, almost any general practitioner, if you walk in not feeling well, you're going to walk out with one of three prescriptions. You're going to have a steroid, an antibiotic, or a painkiller, or an anti-anxiety. I mean, those are the four drugs, and you're probably going to get 1 to 4 of those no matter what you say. How insane to do that on a 7-minute visit when there's no way they can look at your blood work, they can no way talk about your life, your emotions, your foods, your this, your that, your sleep, and they're going to give you one of these 4 drugs that all of them are going to have very serious side effects if used anything more than a short run. So I loved it. And I remember reading that on your site about how to put together your own basic emergency room in your house or treatment room. And actually, I think that might have been what sparked me to purchase that machine from you. And but I am using the tablets daily just for some preventative effects. But the machine is the king daddy. There's no doubt. So what kind of health? And I know the people who I've talked to in my personal life, I mean, most of them have serious health concerns, and that's why they are considering the hydrogen. But I mean, even just prevention is going to play a big role, isn't it? Because it reduces hydroxy radicals, which are one of the most toxic poisons that we accumulate as we age, and it's selective. So hydrogen is the only molecule that I know about that actually can go in and devastate the most corrosive and damaging molecule called a hydroxy, but kind of leave the other ones alone. Nothing else does that. So in other words, everybody could benefit from hydrogen?
Well, yes. I mean, and I'm a good example of that also. In these 3 months, if you look at, we're not doing a video today, but if, people have been commenting, I look 10 years younger. My skin, I mean, for the beauty business, this is fantastic because it gets to the skin and it beautifies the skin. And I've written several times about it being the ultimate anti-aging agent. They don't need to keep spending billions of dollars and coming up with all these incredible expensive treatments for anti-aging. This is it. It's if you're healthy, when as I said before, it's a wind that blows you away from death's door. Well, you could be 40 years away from death's door, and it'll blow you to 50 years.
I love it.
It has a very strong anti-aging because what is aging? Well, aging is increasing acid conditions, which is low oxygen, and low voltage conditions, which is, pH after all is in physics a measurement of voltage, so cell energy, and accumulating toxins and oxidative stress, inflammation. These are all markers of aging. And the wind of hydrogen mixed with oxygen and CO2 even in a healthy person, is just going to repress those aging factors. And you can visually see it.
That's so interesting because, a 40-year-old, you wouldn't see probably those same physical effects. But when I hear and see people like your story, I don't have to have massive scientific proof. I have eyeballs and I have common sense. If you're doing one or two things only and you improve that significantly, I want to be part of that party. I want to join in and have that Kool-Aid. And who wouldn't? Because one is, I'm asking you, is there any risk to exposing yourself to hydrogen at most any normal level, whether it be the tablets or the machine? Is there a risk?
No, there's no. I mean, the only risk is that hydrogen is a fuel. So if you're breathing hydrogen and you stick a match up your nose, well, that's risky.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's contraindicated. So
well, I do. I like to get that does clear the nose hairs out though if you put a lit match in your nose. So I guess I'll have to stop doing that from now on.
Right.
Hey, I did. Yeah. Let me ask you this. I heard on that other interview with Tyler LeBaron, he was talking about it was an interesting story about the people of the past who went looking for the fountain of youth, including Ponce de Leon, and he commented and said most of these waters that were the miracle waters, when they tested them, they were higher in hydrogen than most other waters. I thought that was an interesting little story.
Yes, actually the best waters in the world, natural waters, and also you can make it, are full of magnesium and bicarbonate. And anything that's high in magnesium and bicarbonate is going to also be high in hydrogen because they're alkaline.
Got you. And the thing is, and I don't want to, we got to cover the two other parts that you just mentioned before we end, because in my 43-year career of counseling people and doing all the things I've done in my whole life, I keep going back to the one is pH. That's what we're talking about with bicarbonate. It's the greatest. People use the word poor man's cancer cure. It is amazing. And your writings have really exploded the information on the benefit of that sodium bicarbonate. I mean, Nutrition W sells it in capsules, and you certainly can get it in those cheap powders. And then, but secondly, and I've done a podcast personally on the benefits of magnesium. It's not even benefits; it's life-saving, as you speak about. And the real triad is, bicarbonate of soda or addressing pH, magnesium, and these hydrogen concepts. I mean, that is a powerful defensive against aging, disease. And, it's easy to not think about these things when you're 40, but every few years you get older, and the more people you see suffering with chronic diseases that are not getting better, and they're pretty much turning their life over to the medical field with all their trips to the doctors, their pharmaceuticals, all their side effects. They gave up their life, and that doesn't even count being sick. It's just the routine that you get sucked into. Well, you and I are going to empower the people who have open minds that doesn't have to happen. So I continue on. I don't mean to rattle on like I do, but I love talking to you.
One of the things I want to, exactly what you're talking about, as I said, the book subtitle is Healing with Oxygen, Hydrogen, and CO2. One of the big ignorances of modern medicine is they don't know and don't think about that in the blood, CO2 and bicarbonate are twin sisters. They're really two forms of the same thing that turn into each other almost at the speed of light with the help of an enzyme. Bill Gates, not one of my favorite people on the planet, has made, has equated CO2 with evil, when it actually is a very necessary, healthy gas that plants love, that humans can't live without. And as we age, because our stomach has to make bicarbonate, our pancreas has to make bicarbonate, and very importantly, our kidneys have to make enough bicarbonate to keep the blood pH stable. As we age, those organs are not able to keep up with enough production of bicarbonate. So people become bicarbonate deficient, become acidic, and that is one of the bottom lines to aging and disease. What I teach people, the most difficult part of my protocol is also the cheapest, but it's difficult. It has to do with bicarbonate, but it has to do with breathing. Most people today are breathing too fast. If you want to diagnose yourself instantly, count how many breaths you take in a minute. 70 years ago, the medical norm for breathing was 8 breaths a minute. Today, they've changed that to 12 to 15. Cancer patients are going up to 20. I call 20 breaths a minute or 18 cancer breath. The faster we breathe, the sooner we die. The faster we breathe, the more CO2 we take out of the blood. I'm just losing my voice here.
Let me comment on that then for just a second. I just love how we're echoing each other. I did one of my podcasts on Buteyko breathing, which I know you're probably familiar with, Dr. Buteyko, the Russian physician. And I mean, he came up with this practice of teaching people to breathe and had an extreme cure rate of asthma, anxiety, even some of the ADHDs back in the day. And because you hit it exactly right. Ideally, we should be breathing about 8 times a minute, and there's almost very few of us who do that. And I was speaking to a person last week who has had this anxiety that keeps coming on. I said, one of two things. I said, try to make your exhalation about twice as long as your inhalation, and then work at getting to about 8 breaths per minute. And it was like overnight success, at least when she does it, that it allowed her to calm down, go back to sleep. But it also, I know Dr. Pateco wrote a lot about most animals, if you crush their nose and they have to mouth breathe, they will be spiraling into very poor health or death within 3 months. Except for a cat and dog, they seem to make it, but it seems like zebras and other animals, because you're exactly right about the carbon dioxide. And that comes down to this whole thing with sodium bicarbonate, breathing. And again, if people want to learn about Dr. Pateco, go into my The Holistic Navigator under the breathing podcast. And I speak and I teach you how to kind of put together the program for Dr. Pateco. I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Sircus, because, that's another piece to this toolkit. Yes, it takes some discipline. Yes, it takes a little learning. But once you get the rhythm down, it's just second nature again. And it will make us a healthier person. But again, go ahead back on the sodium bicarbonate too.
Well, but Pateco knows about this device. It comes from Russia called the Fravlov breathing device. And it costs $50. I think on Amazon you can get it for $37 or something. I'm not sure. And it's a little thing you hold in your hand. You put some water in it. Has a tube. You breathe in through your nose and you breathe out through the machine. And your air goes through the water and you blow bubbles. I recommend that to all cancer patients. The fact is that if you're breathing too fast, the faster you breathe, not only the sooner you die, but the sicker you are. It is statistically impossible to be healthy and breathe too fast at the same time. Because as your CO2 levels go down, so does your oxygen. The reason, disciplining your breathing, which is made easier with this little $50 machine, it's still a week by week, month by month, year by year process. But sodium bicarbonate, or potassium bicarbonate, or magnesium bicarbonate, they give you instant access to more CO2 in the blood. That is why it is such a powerful medicine, because it immediately balances the body, turns you from acidic, which is low oxygen and low energy, to high oxygen, high energy, cellular energy, and more CO2 in the blood. So and that's why I wrote my book the way I did. I don't like to isolate one thing from everything else. Vitamin B17 is the answer to everything. It's just,
it's nonsense. I want to, and let me ask you a question, because I know when I advise people on the sodium bicarbonate, I do recommend they do it between meals. Is that something you also agree with?
Yes.
Okay.
The only time to take bicarbonate after a meal is when you have acid reflux, when you get the heartburn, which is not from too much acid, it's actually from too little. You have too little acid in your stomach, you don't digest the food, and so it sits there and actually goes back up. It's still acidic, and it'll still hurt the esophagus or the upper areas of the stomach. When you feel pain from that, if you take bicarbonate, it'll neutralize that acid that's going back up and give you relief. And that's one of the main uses for decades for people who understand what bicarbonate is. Otherwise, that's not the condition. Yes, you take it away from meals first thing in the morning, either a half hour before meals or 2 hours or 3 hours after meals. And just to give people, cancer patients, an indication, the cancer treatment, using bicarbonate, and there's a lot of science behind this, is to take enough bicarbonate to get your urinary pH up to 8, morning, noon, and night.
Wow.
The pH measurement, which you take 3 times a day, is your steering wheel. It's your navigation device to tell how much bicarbonate you need to take. Now, don't do that for the rest of your life, but you can do it for 10 days, cut the dose in half for a week, go back for 10 days. And the most recent research, and I'm writing a 3rd edition to my bicarbonate book now, But the most recent research about bicarbonate and cancer comes from the Ludwig Cancer Institute in the United States. And they basically found that what bicarbonate does to cancer cells, it turns back on their circadian rhythm that they've turned off. Cancer cells turn off the basic rhythm of the cells because they need to eat 24/7. The basic circadian rhythm of the body is 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 12 hours eating, activity, 12 hours relaxation, recuperation, regeneration. They turn that clock off, the bicarbonate turns it back on, so it starts to starve cancer cells because they can't eat as much as they'd like.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So I don't forget it. Also on that breathing, Dr. Pateco, he really huge deal about not mouth breathing. So I want to make sure we remind people breathing through the nose is imperative. That's something we have to teach ourselves because it's, you get in these habits that are lifelong. I mean, it's not going to end overnight, but really thinking every day about nose breathing, slower breathing, all of that imperative. I mean, you've covered some jewels today from, of course, I think people with the hydrogen concept now are going to be informed. You got options, and on your website and your new book, again, you have the tools to help people journey through this aging process, the disease process, on a common sense, safe, relatively inexpensive protocols that you have. You're a brave man, Dr. Sircus, I'll say, because you really put yourself out there because you're doing what your heart says is the right thing. And even though we may have some challenges with that, it's, we can sleep at night. We know we're doing the right thing. And I really consider you a hero in the field. And you tell people again how your website is, how much information you have about, then you can look at the machines if you want on your website. And it is drsircus.com, spelled SIRCUS.com. Is that correct?
Right. It's DR. DR Sircus.
Right. Okay. And also, what's the spelling of the little device on Amazon that you said, please?
It's called the Frovlov. FROLOV.
Okay.
It's very inexpensive. It's a gem. And on my site, go back 5 years ago, I had 1,000 essays on there. You can put in a search on my site for any of the things we've talked about, breathing, CO2, hydrogen, and you really don't have to spend a dime. I write and publish to my site before I put my books together. So everything is there.
And you also do consultations on Skype, right?
I do consultations. I'm also, I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist. I'm a communication psychologist, and a subset of that is listening psychologist. And I'm a COA psychologist. At Harvard University, they call that perceptual psychology. So even though that has not been my focus in the last 15 years, I am going back to that. So I'm also doing online therapy. But most of my focus these past years has been on cancer patients and teaching people how to set up treatment at home. And even if you're a rich person and you're going to go to Mexico or Switzerland and spend a fortune, before you go and when you come home, you still need to treat yourself.
Yes.
And more people are dying of cancer today during this pandemic than anything else. Cancer, everything in the pandemic has been the pandemic. And viruses and blah, 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 blah. But behind the scenes, people are dying of cancer in massive numbers. Massive numbers.
I just intuitively, because of my ability to speak to so many people without even looking at numbers or statistics, you are speaking exactly the truth. The amount of stories that I'm able to hear from the amount of people, it is definitely increasing. Of course, we have a lot to do with the stress of the lockdowns, the loneliness syndrome, everything that you know very well also plays into this demise of our health. So, Dr. Sircus, I just can't thank you enough. I know we've given people tools today. They have tools to access you, your new book on hydrogen, which I know is going to be fantastic, and the machine if people want it. And again, I just thank you so much. And I hope maybe in 6 months we'll get back together. We can go a little further into some of the other parts of this puzzle more in depth, like the magnesium or bicarbonate by itself. So thank you so much for joining me on The Holistic Navigator.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. And thank everyone for listening. And as I say, many of the times I separate the world into two classes of people, learners and non-learners. You're listening to me here on the Holistic Navigator. You've got to be a learner, and you are going to profit exponentially by doing that. Live your life fully, live it with far less fear, and let's get on with our magic that we have as a living human being. Thank you so much.
The information on this podcast and the topics discussed have not been evaluated by the FDA or anyone of the medical profession and is not aimed to replace any advice you may receive from your medical practitioner. The Holistic Navigator assumes no responsibility or liability whatsoever on behalf of any listener of these materials. The Holistic Navigator is not a doctor, nor does he claim to be. Please consult your physician before beginning any health regimen.